and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja, and these are the headlines. Israel has launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, breaking the ceasefire reached after 11 days of relentless bombing last month. In a statement, the Israeli army said it attacked Hamas's compounds and it is ready for all scenarios, including more fighting. This is the first strike by new Israeli government, which follows a controversial march by Jewish nationalists in East Jerusalem. The Taliban say they have discussed the intra-Afghan peace negotiations with the representatives of the Kabul administration in Doha. Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said the two sides deliberated over the order and sequence of talk sessions. Meanwhile, the Afghan military claims to have regained control of Faryab province's Daulatabad district from the Taliban. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Srinagar district. The youth was targeted during a so-called search operation in Bagura area of the district. The occupying troops have martyred at least 368 civilians since the revocation of the valley status in August 2019. China has urged the United States and the European Union to refrain from forming small groups, saying that the act undermines global and regional peace and stability. The Chinese mission to the EU expressed firm opposition to the statement of EU-US summit against Beijing. It said the statement is full of Cold War mentality and goes far beyond the norm of developing bilateral relations. India has registered more than 2,500 deaths from COVID-19, while over 62,000 people tested positive for the virus overnight. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 46 fatalities and more than 1,000 infections over the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives, while infecting over 176 million people so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Israel has launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, breaking the ceasefire reached after 11 days of relentless bombing last month. In a statement, the Israeli army said it attacked Hamas's compounds and is ready for all scenarios, including more fighting. It alleged that the strikes were a response to balloons launched from Gaza that caused 20 blazes in open fields. Meanwhile, a Hamas spokesperson said Palestinians will continue to resist and defend their rights and sacred sites in Jerusalem. Palestinian media said the airstrikes in Khan Yunis city caused material damage, but it is not immediately clear if there were casualties. The first after a new government in Israel, the strike followed a controversial march by Jewish nationalists in East Jerusalem. Thousands of Israelis waving flags and chanting anti-Arab slogans paraded in East Jerusalem, drawing anger from the Palestinians. The Taliban say they have discussed the intra-Afghan peace negotiations with representatives of the Kabul administration in Doha. Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said the two sides deliberated over the order and sequence of talk session. Meanwhile, the Afghan military said it has regained control of Faryab province's Daulatabad district from the Taliban. It comes a day after the Taliban claimed to have killed at least 20 soldiers in Baghtis, Kandahar, Bamyan, and Nangarhar provinces. The group has also accused the Afghan security forces of killing 4 civilians and wounding 5 others during an attack in Logar Surya district. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Srinagar district. The youth was targeted during a so-called search operation in Bagura area of the district. According to the last reports, the joint operation by the military and police is still underway. The identity of the youth is yet to be ascertained. The occupying troops have martyred at least 368 civilians since the revocation of the valley status in August 2019. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to hold a widely anticipated meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin in Geneva today. This will be their first meeting with Putin since Biden took office, with expectations low for any breakthroughs and high for disagreements. Both sides have said they hope the talks may lead to more stable and predictable relations. But Washington and Moscow remain at odds over everything from arms control to cyber hacking to election interference and Ukraine. The nearly 5 hours long meetup will not include any meals, while the two will also hold separate news conferences. China has urged the United States and the European Union to refrain from forming small groups, saying the act undermines global and regional peace and stability. The Chinese mission to the EU expressed firm opposition to the statement of EU-US summit against Beijing. Chinese mission spokesperson said the statement is full of Cold War mentality. He noted the remarks go far beyond the norm of developing bilateral relations. The mission slammed Western attempts to intimidate China. The spokesperson reiterated that Beijing will remain on a course of peaceful development. However, it will firmly safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development interests. India has registered more than 2,500 deaths from COVID-19 and over 62,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives while infecting over 176 million people so far. More in this report. Just a day after the U.S. crossed 600,000 deaths from the COVID-19, a new governmental study found at least 7 people in 5 U.S. states were infected weeks before they reported first cases. Meanwhile, New York State is lifting all restrictions after administering at least 1 dose to 70% of the adults. However, health officials say nearly 900 people received expired vaccine doses at a site in Times Square this month. Ecuador has approved China's CanSino COVID-19 vaccine as part of the president's efforts to accelerate the inoculation plan, while Johnson & Johnson has announced to send 2 million vaccine doses to South Africa by the end of June.
We have received an indication from Johnson & Johnson that it expects to deliver around 2 million vaccines to South Africa by the end of the month, thus replacing those 2 million doses that had to be destroyed.
India doubled the gap between 2 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine without the agreement of a scientific group that the government claimed recommended the increase. While as crowds return to malls and rail stations, the risks of a resurgence of COVID-19 rise manyfold in the country.
We are going to open many activities in the market and public transport. Earlier, it had happened in the country that people increased interaction so much that they either minimized or completely did away with precautionary measures. We have to ensure that it is not repeated. We have to adopt COVID-appropriate behavior that includes masks, distancing, respiratory hygiene, and as well as environmental hygiene.
As European Union prepares for the age of pandemics, it plans to boost early warning systems. It is eyeing to develop a permanent capacity to produce about 300 million vaccines in the first 6 months of any new health emergency. Slovenia has ended a state of emergency, which was declared due to the pandemic 8 months ago. Pakistan has reported 46 more fatalities from coronavirus in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the death toll stands at 21,828. The ministry said over 1,000 people tested positive for the virus overnight, pushing the caseload beyond 944,000. There are nearly 40,000 active cases in the country, while over 882,000 people have recovered. The country's positivity rate stands at 2.46%. According to the National Command and Operations Center, Pakistan has administered over 12 million doses of vaccines to date. The United Nations has reiterated calls on Yemen's rebels to come to the dialogue table and discuss a ceasefire. UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths made the remarks in his final briefing to the Security Council in this position. He said after 3 years of trying to broker ceasefire, Yemeni parties have yet to overcome differences. Griffiths said Houthis are now demanding separate agreements on Hodeidah and Sana'a airport as a precondition for starting talks. He said the United Nations has offered different solutions to bridge these positions, but none of these have been accepted. Griffiths expressed hope that Oman's efforts to end the war will bear fruit. Meanwhile, Griffiths and the U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim Lenderking, are now heading to Saudi Arabia for peace talks. Algeria's biggest political party, National Liberation Front, has won the most seats in the parliamentary elections. In a press briefing, the head of the Electoral Authority said FLN won 105 seats and independent candidates got 78. However, 105 seats are far short of the 204 needed to secure a majority in the 407-seat parliament. The vote was meant to open the way to a new Algeria, heralded by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. The long dominant establishment saw it as a part of its strategy to move beyond 2 years of mass protests. But the turnout was estimated to be at 30% as the pro-democracy protest movement, Hirak, boycotted the elections. Arab states have called on the United Nations Security Council to discuss the dispute over Ethiopia's dam on the Nile River. The foreign ministers of the states have gathered for a meeting on the issue in Qatar's capital, Doha. In a briefing, Arab League Secretary General said stakeholders must negotiate and refrain from any unilateral steps. Qatari Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said the parties agreed on gradual steps to support Egypt and Sudan. Egypt's Foreign Minister Sami Shukri said Cairo is seeking a diplomatic, not a military solution to the conflict. In a briefing, he said Egypt will try to exhaust all diplomatic channels with Ethiopia before resorting to other means. At least 14 people have been killed in a revenge attack by Chadian herders in the far north of the Central African Republic. Authorities say the dispute began when a herder led his livestock into the field near Tiri. They say the cattle destroyed the crops and the farmer killed the herder. Officials added the Chadian herders went on a rampage in reprisal. The herders killed farmers, including women and children, and torched 66 homes as well as granaries. Switzerland says the United States has vowed to provide increased support to a mechanism that allows humanitarian aid to reach Iran. In a press briefing, Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis said the mechanism works, but it is not used enough. Cassis voiced satisfaction with the U.S.'s openness to support the instrument to help the Iranian people. His comment came after him and the Swiss President Guy Parliament met briefly with President Joe Biden shortly after he landed in Geneva. The Swiss humanitarian trade agreement was created with cooperation with the U.S. and Iran, and it took effect last year. It allows Swiss companies to deliver humanitarian aid to Iran without breaching Washington's sanctions against Tehran. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The United States has unveiled a plan to address the threat of violence posed by white supremacists and militias. The move comes 5 months after members of those groups joined in a deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol. Biden administration conducted a sweeping assessment of domestic terrorism that labeled these groups as a top national security threat. The White House released a 30-page plan for increased information sharing between authorities and social media companies. The plan aims to identify and prosecute threats and new deterrents to prevent Americans from joining dangerous groups. In a speech, Attorney General Merrick Garland said Washington will focus on what he called long-term solutions.
I'm pleased to announce that the administration is today releasing the first national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. Each of your components will play an important role in ensuring its success. The national strategy is designed to coordinate and provide a principled path for the federal government's efforts to counter the heightened domestic terrorism threat using all available tools.
At least 36 people have been injured in a car bomb explosion at a military base in Colombia's border city of Cucuta. Defense Minister Diego Molano blamed the leftist National Liberation Army for the attack. Talking to reporters, Milano rejected the terrorist attack, which targeted the 30th Army Brigade. He said the explosions occurred after two men drove a truck into the base while passing themselves off as officials. The defense minister added the involvement of FARC rebels is also being investigated. President Ivan Duque said on Twitter he would travel to Cucuta to meet with military leaders and local authorities. Cambodia has deployed a new army of rat recruits to sniff out landmines as a part of a plan to boost demining operations. The country has one of the highest numbers of mine amputees in the world. More in this report. The African giant-pouched rats have been imported from Tanzania and have undergone intense training to smell and detect explosive devices. A rat handler says the rodents offer results with 100% accuracy due to their extraordinary sense of smell.
I have no difficulty working with old or new rat recruits, as they're all easy to work with and they don't care about who their handlers are. Any one of us can be their handler, and most importantly, they don't bite.
A total of 20 new rat recruits have been deployed since early June, replacing a generation of recently retired demining rats, which includes hero rat Mangawa. Mangawa was given a gold medal last year for his life-saving bravery and devotion to duty by a UK-based veterinary charity, People's Dispensary for Sick Animals. During his 5-year career, Mangawa found 71 landmines and 38 items of unexploded ordnance. He is now enjoying a more relaxed lifestyle at Cambodia's Apopo Center.
Their life is not too much difference from living in the operational area, so the only difference is that he resting a lot.
Including the new recruits, Cambodia has a total of 48 demining rats working in the field, and the government hopes to boost this number in the coming years. Peruvians have rebuilt an Incan hanging bridge using traditional weaving techniques. The bridge has been used for over 500 years to connect communities divided by the Apurimac River. More in this report. The bridge in Canas province of Cusco is known as the Quespuchaca Bridge. During the pandemic, the bridge did not receive any maintenance and in March this year and fell. Members of the affected communities, such as the Hunin Shiri, decided to rebuild the bridge in the traditional Incan style. The bridge is 33 meters long and 1.20 meters wide. In 2013, UNESCO recognized the rituals associated to the annual reconstruction of the Quespuchaca as intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Peru is a country rich in ancient treasures. It has hundreds of sites that date back thousands of years and span dozens of cultures, including the ancient Incan Empire that was in power when Spanish explorers arrived in the early 1500s. China says it will launch the Shenzhou 12 crewed spaceship on Thursday for the construction of its space station. This will be China's first manned space mission in nearly 5 years. At a press conference, China Manned Space Agency spokesperson said the aircraft will carry 3 men to an orbiting space module, Tianhe, for a 3-month stay. Xi Jinping noted that the launch will be carried out with a Long March rocket. Shenzhou 12, meaning Divine Vessel, will be the third of 11 missions needed to complete China's space station by 2022. The launch coincides with the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. Shares in the Asia-Pacific are trading mixed. Investors look ahead to data releases in China as well as the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate decision. Mainland Chinese stocks lead losses with the Shenzhen Composite plunging over 2%. The Shanghai Composite also shed close to 1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell marginally. In Japan's the Nikkei 225 slipped nearly 0.5%, while the Topix Index gained fractionally. South Korea's Kospi edged over 0.5% higher. Australian stocks advanced as the ASX 200 gained marginally. Southwest Airlines has canceled around 500 flights after it had to halt operations over a computer issue. This is the second time in the last 24 hours that the U.S.-based airline was forced to suspend flights. The airline said it suffered intermittent performance issues with network connectivity, which caused the halt. However, the operations are returning to normal. The airline added it is in the process of investigating the root causes behind the technology issues. Earlier, the Federal Aviation Authority issued a temporary nationwide ground stop at the request of the airline as it resolved the issue. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.